Alright, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, we are live in full effect right here, right now, with one of the legendary, in my personal
Oh,
opinion, a hip hop pioneer. We got Kool of the Fat Boys. How you doing this evening?
what's good, man? What's good?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I hope everything's all well with you out there during this terrible pandemic, man. I hope everyone's keeping safe.
Yeah, everything's going good. So far, so good. Thank God.
And the one thing I do want to ask you, Kool, so taking you way, way back in the day, like, what made you decide to get into the music industry to begin with?
Um, we didn't really get into the music industry. We got into sports first. It was like our first love was football. It was kind of like a thing where it was a balance, kind of like it wasn't even a balance. It was 70% sports, 30% music, but music was all around it. Coming up in the household, mother played James Brown and Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, all kinds of great soul singers and even country music. And so I was kind of gravitated to hip hop because it was a new thing. It was kind of like our kind of music. You know what I mean? So when the football stuff kind of fell at the wayside, because we didn't have really like the talent. We thought we did. We played a lot of street football, but it's one thing to play street football and play organized football like in high school. So when that fell kind of like at the wayside, we just went full throttle into hip hop and rap music.
And as we all know, you were actually a member of the group the Fat Boys, which is actually originally known as the Disco 3. I have to ask you, can you tell us the story behind that formation and how did the Disco 3 get together?
Disco Three got together. Well, it was five of us at first. Well, seven. It was a DJ, Bob was the beatbox. It was five rappers. So what happened was they were like childhood friends of ours. They were never coming to practice. They didn't take it seriously. They just said, "Hey, you want to make a rap crew?" Like, let's do it. But they were really never coming to practice. So that just left me, Buff, and Mark. Just to say, you know what? Let's just make our own rap crew, and we just called ourselves the Disco Three. We was gonna call ourselves another exuberant, like flamboyant kind of name, but we were like, well, we already got these crazy names already. Like my name was Almighty DC, and Mark's name was Prince Marky D, and Buff was DJ Doc Nice, the Human Beatbox. So we had these crazy names. We didn't want to have a crazy group, so we just had something basic. So we said, well, we'll be the Disco Three. So that's what we named ourselves, and it was just kind of stuck.
And if you want me asking, like, what made you guys decide to change your name from the Disco 3 to the Fat Boys?
The success of our big first single, our very first big single, which was Fat Boys, the B side was the Put It Up Stickum. Our manager changed the name from Disco 3 to Fat Boys. It wasn't us. He was more like, when people were requesting us to do shows, it was like they kept saying the name Fat Boys. That group that made that song Fat Boys, and they would show here, there, wherever. So he said, you know what? We can't market the Disco 3 name. We can only market the Fat Boys name because everybody is asking about Fat Boys this, Fat Boys that. So we're going to change the name from Disco 3 to Fat Boys. And we had a big name-changing party at a club called Roseland in Manhattan. And that was it after that.
And also, the Fat Boys, you guys were also widely known for using beatboxing in your songs. That you guys actually opened doors for beatboxers like Biz Markie and Dougie Fresh. I have to ask you, like, did you think that you guys using beatboxing within your music would really spark hip hop to actually do the same thing and follow in your guys' footsteps?
Um, well, let me just clear this up. I don't know who really made up. I mean, I know Buck. I grew up with Buck. I didn't know Dougie, so I didn't know if Doug was the first one, and I just knew Buck as being the first one. Years later, people were saying, well, Doug was doing it before Buck. And I'm like, well, I'm not from Harlem, but Dougie's from Harlem. I'll say, I'm from Brooklyn, so I don't know what Doug was doing up in Harlem. I know what we were doing in Brooklyn. DJ Chill Will's Dougie Fresh DJ said, we made it more world. We put it on a bigger stage. Now, as far as I know, Dougie Fresh did it in the movie Beach Street, and Buff wasn't doing a movie at that time. Beach Street came out like in '83. We didn't do Crush Groove to '85, so Doug was the first one to do it on in the movies. Buff did it on a grander scale because we were selling a lot of records at the time. So in a way, Buff opened the door for people to see it on a grand scale. Like, people saw him and they were amazed by these sounds coming out of this guy's mouth. They thought he had some kind of drum machine in his pocket or some kind of device in his pocket. I mean, even I thought that when he first ever did it for me. And I was like, you got something in your pocket? I mean, what's going on? So it was a thing where once we became popular, everybody just thought like we were the first ones to do it. And maybe we were. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't know Doug, and Doug didn't know us. And we were the first ones to do it, and we took it on a world tour, and in America and overseas and everywhere else like that. And everybody just kind of gravitated to it. And at one point, it was like the biggest thing in the music industry, as far as beatboxing. Like, everybody wanted it on their songs. Everybody was doing it in the streets. It was like beatboxing was this crazy phenomenon, and it was just a wild time for beatbox. Like, Dougie Fresh, Biz Markie, and Buff, and Rozelle, and these guys, they created their own lane. They created, like, the sixth element of hip-hop was beatboxing, and they created that. And that's crazy when you think about it,
And I do want to quickly say, prayers out to Biz Markie during this terrible time. I heard he's in the hospital.
Yeah, the Biz is going through a little complications right now. We're just praying for the best for him, and hopefully he'll be okay.
And aside from the music things for a minute there, I also noticed while doing the research for this interview that in the year 1987, you were actually in the comedy movie The Disorderlies. My apologies. What was that experience like doing that movie, and like how did that role come to be for you?
The success, well, not the. I mean, Crush Groove wasn't a big successful movie, but it was a very popular movie in the hip hop world, and in hip hop with hip hop fans. So what happened was, since we had such a huge impact in the movie, our performances in the movie, Warner Brothers offered us a 3-picture movie deal, and the first movie was Disorderlies. So, we went from doing a small budget movie like Crush Groove, doing this big budget movie, Disorderlies. So we shot that in California. Shot that like maybe a half a mile or even closer to the Playboy Mansion. We shot it in this big mansion, and we just had fun shooting the movie. It was crazy. We got Ralph Bellamy to play the part, the legendary actor. So we just had a lot of fun. I mean, people were going crazy within the rap world. They're like, they're starring in their own movie. It's one thing, like, a lot of rappers were just appearing in movies. We were starring in our own motion picture movie. And that was like the big talk at that time. We were like, yeah, they're doing movies, So it was just a lot of fun just doing that movie.
And was that the only movie that you were a part of during those times, or was there other feature films that you were currently a part of?
No feature films. We did Crush Groove, which was our first movie, and we did Nights in the City. We had a small role in a movie called Nights in the City, and that involved Curtis Blow. He was in that. And then we did Crush Groove, and then we did Disorderlies. And we didn't get picked up for the other two movies after that. We had a 3-picture movie deal. Disorderlies was the first movie. We didn't get picked up for the other two movies. So that was pretty much our only feature movie we ever did.
And speaking of Curtis Blow, the Fat Boys' first 2 albums were actually produced by the legendary Curtis Blow. I have to ask you, how did you get connected with Curtis Blow, and of course, what was it like being in the studio with him?
We got connected with Curtis Blow because he was one of the judges at the contest that we won, where as the first place prize was a recording contract. So we did our first song we ever really did was a song called Reality. And this particular song was a take on, at that time, everybody wanted to do these message songs, these conscious rap songs, like The Message on Grandmaster Flash and Series 5. Once that song took off, everybody was doing those kind of songs. So we did our rendition of the message in some, in some kind of way. And it didn't take off. It just kind of I don't think it sold 2,000 copies, if that. So we kind of had to regroup, and our manager said we're going to get Curtis Blow to produce the next song. And we didn't believe him at first. We only met Curtis Blow that one time at the contest in the finals that we won. And we walked inside the studio, and there he was. And we was like starstruck, just staring at him, and just like, Curtis Blow's going to do producing our record and, all this stuff. And it was he just gave us so much advice. He was like really, really cool. It's like having like a big brother in the studio. He just gave us all this advice and told us always write your own songs and, how to be professionals and all this kind of stuff. So it was just cool just to have somebody that we looked up to, be a part of our success.
And speaking of Curtis Blow, like from what I see on his Instagram, he's still going strong after all these years as well.
Yeah, he still does a lot of shows. Kurt still breakdancing too on stage at that. But Kurt is like pretty much the godfather of hip hop. Something like, what I mean? He's like on Mount Rushmore. It's him and Kool and Grandmaster Flash, and so he's pretty much like the man in hip hop to this day.
I'm just gonna say this, when I hit Curtis Blow's age, I just hope and pray that I could still actually, stick and move like him,
Yeah, I mean, he had a little step back there and there health-wise, but he's still out there performing, still doing his thing.
And also, in the year 97, you actually, in the year 87, my apologies, you did the song Wipeout with the Beach Boys, which is my personal favorite from the Fat Boys. I have to ask you, how did you guys get connected with the Beach Boys? And was it a little difficult to actually do that song with them, since they're a different genre of music?
No, not really. We did our part in New York, we did their part in California, and we just blended the two together and flew in the vocals. But the two differences of music is, you look at Run DMC and Aerosmith, they did Walk This Way. So I think that was going to start being a common thing, like groups hooking up with one another, rappers hooking up with groups that they wouldn't ordinarily hook up with in the studio. So we met the Beach Boys on the set of Disorderlies. They were in the movie. They were at the end of the movie Disorderlies. And our manager thought it would be a good idea for us to do a song called Wipeout over. Now, mind you, we never even heard of the song Wipeout. So when he played the song for us, we're like, how the hell are we going to rap to this? Because it was like really fast and had this guitar just going through. And then, so we got with the producer, and then he slowed it down to kind of like that Miami kind of bass sound that was popular at that time. And we just went to the studio, just did our vocals. Took us like 2 to 3 minutes. And, they did their vocals, and the rest was history, and it just blew up,
And I have to say, that's actually really cool, though, you know what I mean? Not a lot of individuals actually, especially in hip-hop, actually have the opportunity to say they work with the legendary Beach Boys.
Yeah, it was cool. The crazy thing, they didn't know who the hell we were. Of course, now we didn't know who the heck hip-hop was. But they didn't really know who we were, but they were like, I think one day, a bunch of kids just ran up to us, asked for autographs. And they started asking, I could hear them, in the background asking our manager, how big are these guys? He's like, in the world of hip hop, they're huge. They're like, and that's when it started dawning on them. Oh, this is going to be big, because these guys are big in hip hop and they're big in rock and roll. And the two meshed together, and it just exploded. Everywhere we went, we heard that song on the radio, like, every city we went to, rather, like 2 or 3 times, within an hour. They were playing that song. I was like, wow, this song's crazy.
And I'm gonna be honest with you. Right after this interview, this is actually what I'm gonna be playing for the live audience, as well as Wipeout. It's actually been in the station's rotation for the past year, so I can tell you, 30+ years later, people are still bumping that track.
Yeah, it has an effect on me, because it's so, when you hear that song, it takes you back. Even if you won from that time, you won it from the 80s like that, it just takes you to a time, it's just a fun song. Like, you can play it at a party and just have fun with it. Like, even at a time like this, when nobody's really going outside and everybody's in quarantine, you could play that in your house and just visit yourself on the beach or something, just having fun with your friends at night, So
And also in 1988, the Fat Boys released this song "Twist" with rock and roll, with actually the singer Chubby Checker. I have to ask you, how did you get connected with Chubby, and what was it like working with him?
The success of Wipeout, they wanted to do. You know how? I mean, I don't know if you ever made a song before. Well, you're in the industry in a way. Once something is hot, the record label tends to gravitate to it again. They either make a remix of it, or they'll try to get that same formula. So that's what our label did at the time. They wanted to make another kind of Wipeout song, and this time they went and got Chubby Checker. So we hooked up with Chubby Checker. He actually knew who we were, and we went into the studio once again. We did our part in New York. I think he did his part in Memphis, Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. And we did the video. He came down to do the video. And we even did the song. We performed the song on the MTV Awards in 88, I think it was. 88, 89, one of them. And we did the song also. We performed the song also at the Nelson Mandela concert in London. So he came out there, he did the song with us. And yeah, so that song was pretty good too. The song was really big overseas. I mean, it just took off over there.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of individuals that come on the radio station. They say like their music out in Europe just blows up and stays like, and it's almost like it's brand new to them, like even after 30 years out in the UK.
Yeah, they really preserve artists over there. They really love their artists. They appreciate the music. Over here in America, it gets stale really quick because we're so spoiled with music, because it comes out every 5 minutes. And we're so, we grew up with the music, so we just tend to just throw it to the background and say, hey, I want to hear some new music. One thing about over in America is it's a thing where you can release an album. I remember this vividly. You can release an album, and the album could be out for a week, and people will walk up to you and say, hey, I got your album. When you making another one? I'm like, well, this album just came out. I mean, just enjoy this album first. So it's like everything moves so fast, whereas places like overseas, like I said, they preserve the music, preserve the artists. You got artists from the 50s and 60s still touring overseas and making a lot of money. Whereas they can't do that over here, but they can do that overseas.
And also, the Fat Boys did the theme song and video for the movie A Nightmare on Elm Street for the Dream Master. I have to ask you, what was it like working with Robert Englund, and also known as Freddy Krueger, and making that music video?
That was fun. That was a lot of fun. Somebody talked to our manager about it. And I don't think our manager knew Friday the 13th. I mean, not Friday, I'm sorry. The Freddy Krueger movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Me and Mark were huge fans of it. And our manager said, you guys want to do a soundtrack, a song for the Nightmare on Elm Street movie? We're like, oh, hell yeah. So they wrote the rhymes. Somebody in that was with the studio wrote the rhymes that we just recited them. And then we did the video. We went to California, and we went on one of the lots in Burbank and did the video. And we shot the video in one day. We had a lot of fun. And then Robert Englund, he came to a club in Manhattan, and he came on stage. Nobody knew who he was. We had to tell them who he was, and they were freaking crazy. They were like, "Oh, that's Freddy Krueger," So that was a lot of fun.
So when you actually did that soundtrack and music video, were you guys fans of the franchise of the previous 3 movies?
Oh yeah. Well, Mark was more fans than me. I don't think Buff really knew too much about Freddy Krueger. Buff was more like a guy who stayed in the studio all the time. But me and Mark was into the horror and the Marvel comic books and the DC comic books, that kind of stuff. So me and Mark, we definitely watched the first 2 and 3 of the movie. The first one, of course, was probably, in my opinion, probably the best one. But the Dream Warrior was just pretty good too. So yeah, we were big fans of the whole, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Hey, well, at least you guys escaped Freddy. Not a lot of people go to Elm Street and actually make it out alive. So
yeah, I know.
I had to throw that one in there. Cool, I had to toss that one in there. But also in '91, yourself and Buff Love actually released Mac Daddy. Can you tell us a bit more about that project and why was there only the two of you on that project?
In 1989, we did our last album for Polydor Records. We separated from my manager. A whole lot of infighting was going on. So we separated from my manager. So our thing was to just take a break from each other as well. Yeah, I remember we have been touring at that time maybe since like '84, like non-stop touring. So we just want to take a break from each other. So Mark said, "Do you think it's cool if I just do a project, outside project?" I'm like, do what you want, So one day Buff comes to me and says, "Hey, I got these guys that want to invest some money in a project." I said, "Well, what kind of project?" He said, "They want to do an album." I said, "Was just us three or what?" He said, "No, it's us two." He said, "Because Mark is doing his thing over there, we can do this." I'm like, "All right, cool." I said, "Well, at the end of the day, this is all about finances." So they say they offering up a lot of money. I said, "All right, let's do it." So we just went to the studio. We were like chickens with our heads cut off, to be honest with you, because we had no structure at that time. See, when you're in the record, the music industry, everything is pretty much laid out for you, from your itinerary to your clothes almost. So when all that is gone, you pretty much just stuck out there naked on the island by itself. So what I mean, like chickens with our heads cut off, but like we were just free to do whatever. We had no structure. Nobody was calling us to say, "You got to interview at this time," or "You got to do this, you got to do that." It was like, "Hey, you want to record today?" "Nah, we can record probably this weekend." "All right, cool." So it was like we just put an album together real quick, and we just put it out. And it wasn't our best work because we didn't put no effort into it. We were still young at that time. But that doesn't make an excuse for we still had experience. But it's just a thing that we was under so much like pressure from the record company and from the management all those years. It was like we were free to do whatever we wanted. So we just went to the studio and we pretty much just had fun.
And you know what? It's understandable, you know what I mean? Because those record executives, they tell you what to do, how they want it, and everything. And now you guys were free of that, so you just went in there and did whatever you felt you guys wanted to do, man. So I look at it as it's still a great record. I enjoyed it personally myself.
Oh, dang. I mean, it's the thing. It's like this. Like if you write like 10 songs within maybe 2 days, and you bring it to them, and they say, "Nah, we don't like that. That doesn't fit what you guys are doing." So you got to go in the studio and make what they want. You're not making what you want anymore. So when it gets like that, it's like, well, this is kind of like a machine. Like we're not happy doing what they wanted, what they want us to do. Why can't we do what we want to do? So when the breakup happened, it was like, okay. And once we went in the studio did the Mac Daddy album, we were doing songs we wanted. Like, all right, I like this. Let's put it out. That kind of stuff.
And I do want to say, like, my condolences to your friend Buff Love, man. I know it's been quite a few years, but I do want to say my condolences, man. He was such a talented individual.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Buff was just a fun guy to be around too. Like 24 hours a day. I mean, if you ever met him, you would not want to leave his presence because he just made you feel like you grew up with him. Like he was like a brother to him or something. That's how he was zany. He was crazy as heck. He was funny, but he was also warm-hearted. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, he was very highly missed by his family, by me, by Mark, by a lot of people.
And also, jumping ahead in the timeline here a little bit, but in 2009, you actually released your first solo project called the Party Time EP. I have to ask you, what's the story behind that record, and is it still available to be purchased today?
That EP was done by Mark's manager at the time. Me and Mark had shared the same manager. Well, he kind of hooked me up with his manager, and he asked me, do I want to do an EP? And I was pretty much just sold on just doing shows and not even going back in the studio and doing no more songs because I know Mark was like he didn't want to do any more songs as far as Fat Boy's project. And I was like, I agreed with him. Like, I don't want to even touch no more Fat Boy songs. And well, his manager was like, well, just do an EP, just put something out, just let people know that you're still here. I said, all right, cool. So I just went in and I got with as a matter of fact, the individual who produced Party Time, he did the Mac Daddy out on Sean Rayner. So I went to the studio. We did like maybe 30 songs, and we just sat down and picked out a couple of songs and just put them out. I think it's still out on iTunes, I'm not mistaken.
So everybody, if you got Apple, make sure you, if you don't have it already, make sure you get the Party Time EP, because you know what I mean, party to that, you know, some COVID-19 entertainment, snag that record. But also, so in October 18th of 2010, you guys, TV One's actually aired the unsung story of the Fat Boys. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and of course, how did it feel to actually have you got your guys' own TV documentary?
Unsung came about once again. It was Mark's manager, Louis Gregory is his name, and he asked us, "Do we want to be in a show called Unsung?" It's like it's sort of like the VH1 behind the music kind of thing. And once we found out what the show was all about, we were like, well, we're not unsung. We had 6 consecutive, hit albums, so how can that be unsung? But the producer who produced the show, he told us we're going to be the first rap group they're going to be premiering on the show. And I said, all right, cool, if we're going to be the first ones, let's do it. So we just sat down, we told our stories and how we grew up and, the highs and the lows of the group. And, people just, they ate it up. The next day, I think the day after it aired, I was getting so many freaking phone calls and for interviews, and people was just saying, oh, I'm so sorry this happened, and the story is so sad. I'm like, well, don't be sad. It's just, these are the things that happen, you're not going to have a perfect career in any stretch, in any occupation. Your career is not going to be perfect. You're going to have some pitfalls, you're going to have some highs, you're going to have some steady lows, so that's just something that happens, And plus, we were very young when we started out. So by the time we got to our early 20s, we were pretty much burned out as far as mentally burned out in the industry, and just, people, it's crazy to hear people say now, like, oh, these guys are so old and this and that. I'm like, we're younger than Run DMC and Houdini and all these guys. Like, we were like the youngest group out there. But people tend to look at us like we were the first rap group out. Like, dude, we're not as old as you think we are. But it was fun doing the show, and it was produced very well. So I enjoyed watching. I think I watched it once, and it was kind of sad when talking about Buff and all that. So that's why I really don't watch it too much. We'll watch it again after that.
And the one thing I do want to say pertaining to that, man, is the one thing I don't like about hip-hop fans is a lot of people, they put a timestamp on hip-hop. They say, oh, this guy's too old to do it. My personal opinion, I look at it as long as they can still perform, they can still do what they need to do and have that proper breath control when on the microphone, I truthfully believe you can be any age and still do hip-hop. Like, look at Curtis Blow, for instance. That guy is still... That guy would take out majority of this new age hip-hop crap. Like, Curtis Blow would blow him out of the water.
Oh yeah, his show is just legendary shows. His performance on stage is better, like you just said, better than 90% of the artists out there right now. Because he's a true performer. Whether it's hip hop or whether it's singing or whatever, he's just a true performer. I think the thing with hip hop is the age limit thing is I've never understood that. It's like as soon as you reach 30, you're being called an old man. Like, oh, you're old and you're this, you're that. And I'm like, well, it's music. And I think Frank Sinatra performed up until he was 86 years old when he passed away. So music is music. If you can perform, if you can get out there and perform, it doesn't matter the age. If you can get in the studio, make a nice song or a song people can relate to, hey, music is music. There shouldn't be an age limit on any kind of music, and especially in hip-hop.
I gotta ask you though, Kool, what is next for you? Is there any current projects you're working on? Anything you want to promote here live on the air to our audience?
the university, the 360 University podcast. Me and my boy DJ 360. We got that out. We're on our 17th show. So we're just doing that right now, and we're just having fun doing that. We got picked up by Spotify, and so we're just having fun. We're gonna get the YouTube channel up and do a lot of shows to get a lot more interviews, and we're just having fun just doing that right now. And I'm just comfortable with doing something like that, a podcast, and because I can just be in the comfort of my own home and go live on IG or whatever, or do a Zoom with another artist and just interview them and just have fun doing that. So that's what I'm concentrating on now, just to make it bigger and bigger.
So everybody that is listening, make sure you follow them on Spotify. Check out their show. You know what I mean? That actually sounds very interesting. Like, are you currently doing the interviews actually right now as well? Like, what kind of interviews do you have coming up, if you don't mind me asking?
We got Grandmaster Caz coming up. We interviewed Chuck D. That was a pretty good interview. We interviewed Chuck D 2 months ago. We got Grandmaster Caz coming up next week. We got the young ladies from 357, MC Hammer's rap group. We got them coming up Wednesday. I'm pushing for Common to get him on the show, and also Snoop Dogg. So we got a lot of things lined up with the show, within the show.
That's actually pretty cool. I actually had Grandmaster Cass on not too long ago, so you're definitely in for a treat when you have him on. He's a phenomenal individual.
Yeah, like I told Caz, I'm a huge fan of his. I'm like, I've been a fan of Caz since I was coming up, just listening to the tapes, and Caz is one of the guys, with the Cold 4 is one of the groups that got us really into rapping, Treacherous 3 and, Flash 35 and those guys. So, it was just definitely an honor just to interview Caz, one of my rap heroes.
So, Kool, this is the time of the interview that I give a chance for the individual that comes on the radio station before I wrap things up. Just a chance to give shoutouts to whomever they want to give shoutouts to. And if you can, drop them social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and your podcast if they're not already doing so.
Yeah, just to give a shout out to all the hip hoppers out there, all the hip hop listeners, the classic hip hop listeners who are just enjoying the music and keeping the culture going. Whether you're making music or listening to the music. Shout outs to Biz Markie. Hope he gets better. Pray that he gets better. And I'm at legendary Kool Rock Steve, legendary Fat Boy Kool Rock Steve on IG, and Damon Kool Rock Wembley on Facebook. So that means I'm on there every day. It's like people starting to think I own Facebook or whatever because I post it on there all the time. I just like to connect with people. I was never into the whole celebrity kind of thing. I was never really into that stuff. So I just like to communicate with people. Like, I'll sit down and talk with anybody about sports, music. It doesn't matter. I'm just that kind of person.
And that's the best way to be, and that's why I gotta say this is why you're still relevant today, because you were such a huge artist, but you actually still communicate with your fans and whatnot. And I gotta say though, Kool, thank you again for coming on the radio station. Like I said, personally, I've been a huge fan of you. I think I told you that the first time we spoke on the telephone as well off the record, but thank you for years and years of amazing hip-hop, man. You helped spark a genre of music that is still listened to today, so thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me. Anytime you want to do this again, just let me know.
Hey, most definitely, and I most definitely will hit you up. I do want to say thank you so much, Kool. Have yourself a wonderful night, and try and be safe out there.
All right, you too, man.
All right, peace.